Well, I have a great job, and I love being an editor because I get to see the movie from every perspective, and I don't know how many jobs there are that allow you to do that other than director. I think that says a lot about how important editing is in the process. I get to see usually a little bit of pre-production. I get involved with the script usually before the movie's been shot. I get to read the script and give comments on it. Then I'm there for pre-production a little bit. During production, I see the movie as it's being shot. I'm on set. I get to watch the director work with the actors. But then when the whole crew goes home after the movie's wrapped, I'm still on the movie. I get to see what happens in the editing room as we cut the movie together. I get to hear him talk to the composer. I get to watch the visual effects artist work. I get to manage the sound crew and mix the movie, which is my favorite part. And then I get to deliver the film and then go to the theater and watch it with an audience. And I have seen that movie from when it was just a dream in somebody's head to when it's in front of an audience, and it's pretty fun.
Here with the mission, sir? Trying to get me back in the world?
Trying to save it.
Working at Marvel's really great. I've been totally blessed to get involved with these guys because they are really a filmmaker studio, and they think like filmmakers. Kevin Feige, who runs the studio, he's a filmmaker. He's a studio executive, but he's also a filmmaker, and he's really smart. Has great taste, and he's really the person who kind of oversees the franchises, but also there's overarching story arcs that move from film to film, as we saw with the lead up to Avengers. And I think that having someone like that's guiding the process, it makes it easy for us because we approach them just each film as its own unique film. There are maybe references to the other movies. There may be some demand that the movie has to lead into the next film, but we don't ever feel that because the films are each unique experiences. They're stories that have to work as standalone movies. The Avengers is a culmination of a series of Marvel films, but it's my hope, and we tried really hard to make that movie a lot of fun for people who had never ever seen another Marvel movie.
What are you asking me to do? It's called the Avengers Initiative.
No matter what kind of movie you're making, you're working on a team, and it's a big team. There's pre-production, production, post-production, and those three worlds sometimes overlap, but you're having to really work with a lot of different people, and they're all using their own different systems for things. So keeping everybody together, working together is really crucial.
We had 2 editors the whole time. We had 2 firsts and 1 second, which is Matt, and then myself, an assist, and 1 apprentice, and 2 VFX editors as well.
You know, over 1 million feet of dailies, 92-day shoot for first unit, a 47-day shoot for second unit. It was the amount of material and media coming into us was enormous, and it didn't stop.
Media management is important, and we have a team of assistants that are incredible. We couldn't make these movies without them, especially the big complex films that have a lot of footage. And they are this amazing group of people who design and manage a dailies workflow, and those designs are custom for every film because directors have different demands, producers have different demands, and movies have different demands. Every movie's different. It really requires a custom job, and that's what our assistants are great at.
Doctor, we need you to come in.
What if I say no?
The speed at which I can get material from set, I can sometimes have a scene cut before the director sees the dailies at the end of the day now. I get the material so fast. And I think that's helpful because I can help consult on how things are going. I can be sort of a consigliere about, you know, how the movie's going, especially in the first few days, which are crucial when you're trying to find out what it's gonna feel like and what the tone's gonna be. So that speed can sometimes be a problem because everybody wants everything right now, but having the ability to answer the director's call quickly is one of the most significant parts of, you know, it's only been in the last few years that you've been able to get material into the system that quickly. It's the advent of digital sound capturing, it's the advent of shooting on non-film based systems like the Alexa.
The workflow on Avengers was they'd shoot to Arri Raw to Codex mags. Those mags would come to me in editorial and I'd back them up to LTOs on a Codex lab. Then those mags were then sent to an E-film trailer where they were copied to a SAN, where they got color corrected based on reference material that the DIT and the director of photography would send to them. And then they made DNX Media through Colorfront, which was then sent back to us.
So eFilm was integral in the dailies workflow and into post for Avengers. They sent out a team of colorists and dailies operators and everybody to Albuquerque, and they were like one building over from us. So any issues that we had, you know, could be resolved right away.
War has started.
Robin really kind of, on Avengers, was the kind of go-to guy. So we would go and have meetings with eFilm and work out the workflow and the, you know, the color and the sound and how everything was going to come back to us.
I was fortunate enough to get into Photochem Next Lab right at the time that Red and all these cameras were becoming very popular, so I got a whole bunch of time to do R&D, and I got to go from the ground up and learn these cameras and the workflows as they were being developed. So I spent 2.5 years doing that before I ever became an assistant editor.
It's integral to set that up from day one and have the right workflow, because it could just fall apart real easy, and if it starts unraveling, it's really hard to go back, especially with the time pressure that you're under.
I'm finding that a lot of the things that post houses used to do are slowly making their way into the editorial room. You'll find a lot of shows these days that are processing their own dailies with assistant editors that they don't even use a post house for. For instance, I was doing the VFX reference pulls on Avengers. We pulled almost 1 million frames just in-house. I mean, I'd feed it in EDL and just let it do its thing, you know? One
of the great things about the Avid and nonlinear editing in general is you can have everything that was shot at your fingertips at every moment. It's every visual effects iteration, every shot that was shot on production, all of the dialogue that was recorded on every microphone. I mean, it's a massive amount of material that we have to manage, and it's all available to the editor at all times.
I mean, we were very meticulous about the way we handled data. Everything was on encrypted drives for security. Everything was backed up to several different places, including 2 SANs and 2 sets of LTOs, making 4 LTOs total. There wasn't one frame that was lost on this entire movie, and we shot, I think, almost 200 terabytes of very raw, at least, was my final count near the end. And countless hours of 5D and tons of film, too.
We have an incredible visual effects department on the Marvel movies. I mean, the supervisor on Avengers was this guy named Yannick Sears, and he's better at his job than anybody I've ever seen. He's just amazing, and he is the reason that movie is as spectacular as it is, because he understands how to make these amazing shots and how to deliver them for the director.
With, you know, 2-3 visual effects editors, thousands of shots. You know, we had 2 3D editors that handled all the 3D stuff to kind of feed off the craziness of visual effects films and the complexity of it all.
Before we turn over shots to the visual effects department, we start working on them on the Media Composer. It allows you really powerful compositing tools. It allows you to do really complex tracking, stabilize shots.
I mean, you'd be shocked some of the complex effects that they pull off just so the director can get a basic idea of what it's eventually going to look like. Then, if it's a little too complicated for the Avid, they bring in the previs and the post-viz, and then eventually those get replaced with the effects shots and so on, and you get your finished product in the end. But I couldn't even begin to tell you how many layers and animats and Spectre keys and 3D warps there were on this show. It was absolutely amazing.
So that you know before you move on with your edit that you're going to be able to make this work when it does move on to the more advanced visual effects stages. It's incredibly flexible and useful.
A main plate is essentially something that's going to be used in the film, that's going to be comped on, that's going to have a lot of effects work put into it. A reference plate is simply reference material that the VFX houses use to gauge lighting and costumes and all that other kind of stuff. Stuff that isn't actually going to be in the film, but it's used to help create those main plates. The main plates were pulled on a Colorfront system at eFilm where they were pre-timed, and then all the reference plates were done in-house in editorial on a Codex lab and sent log DPX straight out of the lab.
When you're cutting a film that has a lot of visual effects, you have characters that are going to be added later as CG characters, you have to work in a slightly different way. Typically what happens is, like for the Hulk, who is a fully CG character, when Mark Ruffalo goes away and transforms, then our Hulk is all CG. He was built by ILM. For a character like the Hulk, they need to have a really sophisticated and detailed movement reference. And for this film, we wanted that to be Mark Ruffalo. We wanted Mark to perform the motion capture so that the Hulk's movements, his body language, all those fractal things that you can't really define, still feel like Mark. And we were able to get him to do it. So his facial expressions, his movements and so forth, those are derived from Mark Ruffalo's performance. And I cut those with Joss and made decisions about those just the way I would make the decisions about the performance of any actor with the director. We wanted to be involved in choosing the performances that created that visual effect. So, like I said before, it's really not any different than editing anything. You're editing performance. That performance is being attached to a really complex digital image that turns into a digital character, but the movement and the authenticity of the movement and the facial expression, that's the director and I making those decisions and sending it on to the visual effects department. So it's really editing at every level.
Guys,
I'm bringing the party to you.
Another thing I'd tell people who are starting out or who are interested in learning a little bit more about editing is I'd really suggest that they learn about motion picture sound, because it's more important than anybody ever realizes. I mean, it is fully 50% of the experience you have in a theater. And I'm not exaggerating about that. It really delivers a lot. If you think about what that track is, it's the music, it's the actors' voices, it's the sound effects, it's the backgrounds, it's all of that imagery. And you can have a beautiful looking movie, but I find too that audiences are much more forgiving of a disparity between visual shots. If two shots don't quite fit together, they won't notice, but if a sound is interrupted, they'll feel like something is profoundly wrong. I mean, sound is a huge part of cinema, and I really love motion picture sound, and mixing the movie is one of my favorite parts of the process. The ability of music to move people is huge. I mean, anybody knows that. Anyone who has had a human experience knows that music is incredibly significant and moving, and it moves us emotionally. But really, it's just a collection of sound and rhythm. It's not anything magic, but yet it is magical. And the difference is it's the organization of those pieces. It's the length between beats. It's the pitch of the note. It's the frequency of which the notes come, and it's the structure and how that structure is repeated. All of those things are editing. I tend to not edit with temp music until I've got a pretty good cut of the scene, and then I want to apply music to the scene. But I don't want to put music on the scene while I'm editing it, because it's going to affect my rhythmic perception of how the scene's playing. And I think a movie should be able to be screened without any music and have its own rhythm and have its own pace and have its own drive and affect you emotionally without any underscore and any music at all. Only when the movie works can you then add music to augment it. I think that's an important technique for me. I don't like to apply music to cuts until later. But that said, I'm very affected by music. I listen to music sometimes while I'm editing. I just simply don't sync it up to picture in any way that's repeatable, because I don't want to get a preconceived rhythm in my head that only works with that piece of music, because I don't know if that's going to be the director's choice or if we're going to be able to afford it or use it. So I tend to try and work without it. Maybe the single most important thing that's happened since the advent of nonlinear editing is DNx36, which is this high definition resolution. And it's been around for a few years now. We all take it for granted, but the ability to see that image at that level of resolution, it is an absolutely essential tool. Advances in technology in image capture and nonlinear editing have made it possible for pretty much anyone to go out and self-finance a feature film. And I think that if I were starting out today, I would probably have a lot more opportunities to edit, because there'd be a lot more of these films being made. When I was coming out of film school, if you wanted to make a movie with the kind of resolution and at the quality that we see today, you would have had to spend minimum $100,000, maybe more. Some people were spending, $1 million, $2 million to make these small independent films back in the early 90s. And now you can make a film with the same image quality for tens of thousands of dollars, maybe $25,000, $30,000. Is the movie going to be any better? Well, that depends on your screenplay and your actors and your editor. But the the ability to do this now is amazing, and I think that young editors today are going to have more opportunities to work on movies, you know, because they're not, it's less of a risk because you're spending a lot less money and people can really get their own personal visions out there.
Apparently I'm, what is it, volatile, self-obsessed, and don't play well with others.
Well, I think if you want to edit motion pictures, you know, narrative feature motion pictures, you gotta understand acting. You have to take an acting class. You gotta learn how actors work. The more you know about performance and how performance art is created by that actor, the better you're gonna be, because those guys are doing something that's craft. They're working. They're not just movie stars, they're really talented craftspeople. They come in and they do their job, and it's a job, and there's a technique, and you can learn it, and you can do it too. But I'm never gonna be a good actor. I don't have it in me, I don't have that talent. But when I watch these guys work, I can see how they're working. I can understand their process a little bit more if I know a little bit about how they learned how to do what they do. So I encourage everybody to take an acting class. It's a lot of fun. You're gonna learn a lot about yourself. It's actually something you can use in your life, because acting is simply, you know, finding ways to express your emotions and finding ways to, you know, to get your point across. It's communication. People have been doing it for as long as there have been people. So it's a great thing to learn, and I highly recommend it. The other thing I would say is you gotta learn screenwriting. If you don't know screenwriting, you cannot be an editor, period. Don't do it. Don't go in the room because you're not really qualified. You need to understand film structure. You need to understand how screenplays are created and how they're assembled. Because before the movie is edited, it is written. When you are editing the movie, you're essentially rewriting the movie. If you don't understand the fundamentals of film structure, if you don't understand how a writer approaches material, you're not going to be particularly helpful, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is deliver the audience a great screenplay with incredible acting. So you need to know how to make a great screenplay, and you need to know how to get great acting. I have been really lucky in my career because I've been able to work on a lot of different kind of movies. I've worked on big budget films, I've worked on tiny, small budget movies, I've worked on comedies, I've worked on dramas, I've worked on a horror movie. I've gotten to do a lot of different things. And I think that's important. I think for me, exploring these different genres, working with a lot of amazing actors and incredible directors and writers, I mean, I've just been so fortunate. I can't even believe it sometimes. I've just never thought that I would be able to work at this level with these great people. But I think it is important to stretch, and the films that I've done at Marvel, you know, I can't lie, they're really fun, and it is not difficult to go to work in the morning because, you know, spending the day making these films is, you know, it's like being a kid, and these are movies that, you know, my son's gonna love when he's old enough to see them, because, and I want him to be cool. I don't want my son to tell me, hey, I saw Avengers, it was okay. I mean, that would be devastating. I mean, when he sees this, when he's old enough to see it, I want to make sure it's a really good movie. So I think it's important to find stuff that you can be personally involved with. In other words, you have an emotional attachment to it. So when people ask me what kind of movies should I try to work on if I want to break into the business, I'm like, what kind of movies do you like? What moves you? What makes you excited about cinema? What kind of films did you see when you were a kid that started you off? That's the stuff you should be working on. It's the stuff that really excites you and makes you feel like you're part of it. I mean, it's the stuff that you would go see if somebody wasn't paying you. They'll pay you to do it. I think you have to find the stuff that you really love.